The silent cabin. Deep in the woods of Northern Maine stood an abandoned cabin. It was a simple structure, weathered and broken, the kind of place that locals warned you to avoid. Everyone in the nearby town of Birch Hollow had heard of it, the so-called silent cabin. Rumor had it that no bird sang near the cabin, no wolf howled, and no sound of life could ever be heard. But Emily, a journalist with a passion for uncovering the truth behind urban legends, wasn't afraid of such stories. When she heard about the silent cabin from her editor, she jumped at the opportunity. She was determined to spend one night there and find out what made the cabin so silent. Emily arrived at the edge of the forest just as the sun dipped below the horizon. The path leading to the cabin was overgrown, the trees crowding together like skeletal sentinels. She brought with her only the essentials: a flashlight, a camera, a notebook, and a voice recorder. The cabin revealed itself after an hour of trudging through the dark woods. It sat in a small clearing, the moonlight giving its rotting wooden frame an eerie glow. The door hung slightly ajar, creaking softly in the cold breeze. Inside, the air was heavy and cold, and Emily immediately noticed the unnatural silence. It wasn't just quiet, it was oppressive. Her footsteps on the wooden floor seemed to vanish as soon as they were made. There was no echo, no ambient noise, just nothing. The first hour passed uneventfully as Emily took photographs and scribbled notes. But then strange things began to happen. Her flashlight started flickering, even though the batteries were fresh. Her camera refused to focus, capturing only blurry, distorted images, and her voice recorder played back whispers that she hadn't heard while recording. "I'm not alone," she wrote in her notebook, her hand trembling. As midnight approached, the silence grew heavier, as though it had a physical weight. Emily felt it pressing against her chest, making it hard to breathe. She decided to leave, but when she opened the door, the forest outside was gone. In its place was an endless void of darkness. Panic set in. She closed the door and backed away, her mind racing for an explanation. That's when she saw it. A figure stood at the far corner of the room, its outline barely visible in the dim light. It was tall, unnaturally so, with elongated limbs that seemed to stretch impossibly long. Its face was blank, just smooth, pale skin with no features. The figure didn't move, but Emily felt its gaze, as though it was studying her. Desperate, she tried to scream, but no sound came out. The silence swallowed her voice before it could form. She stumbled backward, tripping over the broken floorboards, her flashlight rolling out of reach. When she looked up again, the figure was closer. She scrambled to her feet, her heart pounding in her chest. She reached for the door, only to find it locked. She hadn't locked it. The figure took a step forward, its movements unnaturally slow and deliberate. Emily banged on the door, her fists aching with the effort. Tears streamed down her face as she mouthed silent pleas for help. The figure was now only a few feet away. In a final act of desperation, Emily turned and hurled her notebook at the figure. It passed right through as though the creature were made of smoke. Then the silence shattered. A deafening scream erupted from the figure, a sound so piercing and otherworldly that it drove Emily to her knees. She clamped her hands over her ears, but it did little to muffle the noise. And then, everything went black. Emily woke up in the woods, the morning sun filtering through the trees. Her belongings were scattered around her, and the cabin was gone. When she returned to town, she discovered that she had been missing for 3 days. Her editor, frantic with worry, asked her what happened, but Emily couldn't explain. She quit her job soon after and moved far away from Birch Hollow. But at night, in the silence of her new home, she often felt as though she wasn't alone. And sometimes, when the room was quiet enough, she swore she could hear faint whispers calling her back to the cabin.